Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning. This is Valerie.
Hey, it's Angel. Hey, Colin.
How are you?
I'm good. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
Morning, Sarita.
I'm sorry.
I said good morning.
Good morning. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I know Malcolm's not coming. Who's missing?
Russ just texted me and said he won't make it due to a conflict, and he doesn't have minutes done.
Okay. We're not at quorum, so I guess that doesn't matter. We'll have to table the minutes for last month for our next meeting. Anyway, we have a short agenda. Nothing to vote on today. I think it's 2 items. Well, 3 items on the agenda. We wanted to have an update and follow up on the 300, 500 block of the Main Street housing units that are going to be, they are in the process of being developed at this time. And gaps analysis, and if time permits, an update from Ebony, but I don't see Ebony here either. So that might get pushed to next month. Commissioner Carter, do you have any updates for us from the questions from with our meeting 2 months ago, where we had questions back in June about the 300 and 500 block units?
I don't have anything other than what I've already sent out. And
Mhm.
frankly, I don't keep those details in my head, all those numbers and things. But if you would like for me to pull that together and resend it, I can do that.
I don't think you need to pull it together and resend it. I try to do, I can't remember. I've been on vacation, and I can't remember because I actually took a vacation and I did not look at anything, which is
I've kind of been on
very
vacation
rare for me.
too. I'm trying to ease back into reality myself. I get it.
Normally I work on my vacations, and I did not do that this time. And my son was very surprised and proud of me, I think. 'Cause I'm using that time to catch up.
Good for you, Sharita.
Yeah.
I will have to. Ruby, you sent that out to us, right?
Yes, I'm looking for it.
I was looking forward to. I just want to bring people's attention back to it for discussion. I think this is something that we have a little time on, if I'm not mistaken, and I want folks to be up to date on it, because I think it's an important it's an important housing initiative that is happening in our community, and I think that our homeless neighbors need to be considered in the process of those developments in any way that we can help that consideration happen. I think is a good thing. As everybody knows, we are in a really bad space right now as it relates to affordable housing. You would be amazed how many calls I'm just getting from just people who know what I do, who are trying to connect their folks with housing opportunities in Durham County. And these people are not homeless, but probably really close to becoming it because they're in some really bad situations with the current housing circumstances they're sitting in right now. So yeah, I think that any way that we can get our folks who are still struggling to find a place to stay, this opportunity, that we need to make some kind of appeal and request to our county leadership for that. So I would ask folks to be up to date and current and ready for that discussion when we have it. So don't be surprised if it's on our August agenda or our September agenda. I think we need to be mindful that as people are transitioning off and new folks are coming on, when we don't make decisions and then we ask those new people, then we have to actually step backwards because we have to bring all those people up to speed. So it becomes even more important that our current group of people make some kind of decision before transitions happen. You guys agree with that?
She pulled it up for us. Ruby pulled it up so that we could see it.
Okay. Yeah, I see it on my screen, a little distorted, but nonetheless, it's here. Don't know. Let's see. True greater. Is there any way you can make it a little bit smaller? I don't know if it's just my eyes or if everybody sees that distorted look of the type.
A little blurry.
It's blurry, yeah.
Yeah, you want her to make it smaller? It is small. With the lettering?
Well, I was thinking if she has it zoomed up big, it's gonna distort it more. So if she made it smaller, then it might be easier to read.
I'll just forward it to everyone again. It's in my email. I'll just forward it again.
Thank you, Ruby.
Thank you, Ruby.
While that's getting forwarded out, let me introduce you all to those who don't know Elisa, who's joined our homeless team to help us with our ESG COVID funds. She'll be working to help get those contracts out and frantically working to get our RFP finished. So welcome,
everyone.
Elisa.
Thank you, Colin. It's nice to meet you all virtually. Hopefully I will meet you one day in person, but I'm looking forward to working with you.
So Ruby is sending it out. We may have a very short meeting today then. I would just encourage everybody to read it. And be ready for a discussion next month. Just remember, we don't want to have to hold this decision off until we have a completely new committee, because then it will require getting those people up to speed in a way that may put us in the position where we miss out on the opportunity. So please be ready for that discussion.
Sharita.
Yes.
So, here at DSS, we kind of wear two different hats right now. We're dealing with a very low income or extremely low income population coming in for our emergency rental assistance program, but we're also dealing with, entry point. And, the concern that has been raised several times is that, we're facing a situation in which our extremely low income population are kind of in, they're not kind of in, they are in lease situations that they cannot afford the rent that they have. Either the rent is more than their income or it's way more than 50% of their income. So their rent burden is extremely high. And if we aren't able to use our housing stability dollars to try to find them a different rental lease obligation that is less, then they will lose their housing. If
Right.
not today, then maybe 3 months from today, or maybe, a little bit further down the road. So in essence, what that means is that those who are about to lose their home are competing for the same affordable housing units that those who are coming out of the homeless system is.
Right.
So that's a real tough place for us to wear the both hats, because we don't want people to stay in homeless, situations any longer than they have to, but we also don't want to force people into homelessness to be eligible for affordable housing.
Right.
So I think that's one of the discussion points that I would like to add, if it's not already on the agenda, about how are we going to manage the 56, affordable housing units that are scheduled to be at the 300 and 500 block when, we obviously have hundreds of people coming in for ERAP and coming into our homeless system that need more than 56, 30% or less AMI affordable housing units.
I agree with you 100%. It's a really tough place to be. And it's unfortunate that we have to choose. But I don't know if there's an easy answer or a way around it.
I know.
I mean, we're just, this is where we are until Durham's leadership pushes a more proactive response to our housing situation. Unless we want to be in the business of displacing people from their homes and sending them somewhere else. Because clearly that's what we are. I mean, I even know people who are homeowners in Durham who are just deciding to let their houses go here because it's just not practical for them to be here, to go somewhere else. Until we as a community get really clear on what we're doing right now. I just hate to see families go through the homeless services system, which is extraordinarily expensive unnecessarily, because we don't have the ability to get them where they need to be in order for them to be successful. I understand that there are already people in the pipeline that need affordable housing as well. I guess that's why I'm kind of bringing it here, because I think now is the time to lean into affordable housing, because our need is greater than 56 units. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
I'm not just talking to you, Sharita. I'm talking to the gang here. I'm talking to everybody so that they understand that we are only slated to bring in 56 more units. And we have already served over 200 people through the ERAP system, not to mention the number of people who've come through coordinated entry or entry point. And, this is, evictions are part of the crisis, but so is affordable housing. I think we have really, really met the precipice here and the breaking point of how are we going to treat those individuals who are in extremely low income, category or classification or whatever we want to, put it at. But, those who are in that space, what are we going to do? Are we throwing them away? Are we just saying, go live under the bridge and then we'll go, have an encampment policy to come take care of you? What are we doing?
Right. I mean, really, there's no, the alternative almost feels like you just let the homeless people stay homeless so you can house the other people. But we know when we leave, when people stay on the street for a long time, they die.
Exactly.
I know. And we're going to add we're going to add 200 more people to that homeless list because we can't house them.
So
And
the
that-
so I'm sorry, go ahead, Janine. I'll wait till you finish because this is crazy.
Yeah, well, I know. I guess that's why I'm saying that this is, it's like Sophie's choice, right? We can either allow people to stay on the street and potentially die, or we can put 200 more people on the street so that they can potentially die. And that's,
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. Everybody's gonna get a comment.
Yeah,
Opportunity to speak.
I have a question before someone else comments. Are you saying 200 more individuals or 200 more families?
households.
Okay, because that's different. It's more than 200 people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, I
Let
know
me clarify
college
that.
students. I'm getting calls about college students in this same situation. You know, like we have a snowball effect at the bottom. That's what we have.
No.
And even if right now, today, if somebody dedicated 200 units, we still got to build it. So what do we do in the meantime? Second of all, we don't even have enough shelter to accommodate the people that we have. We don't even have a unique enough shelter in our system to actually accommodate people with trauma, you know, people with sex offender, you know, histories. I mean, I know we look at them as bad people because they're sex offenders, or some people do, not me. But at the same time, they still deserve to have a place to stay and live and thrive, especially if they, you know, they've served their time, they're on the up and up, they're trying to do better, they're abiding by all those parameters and agreements that they have to make to be able to be out. And then we just don't have anything for them. Like we're getting snowballed, and I understand that, but I feel like at the same time to not ask for some accommodation for some of our folks is also at a disadvantage. Am I saying we need all 56 units? I mean, in a perfect world, yes, we need them and more. But
Right.
I think that what the challenge that we're having in our setting is that we're afraid to choose anything because we feel like if we choose one thing, we're gonna impact the other side. But we're the ones that are thinking about it. You know, we're not just thinking about our people on the street, we're thinking about our people potentially coming to the street. So like that's the space that we're in. We need our county commissioners, our city folks, some of these private people that are coming and throwing all these jobs. We need other people having this conversation that we're having and being just as concerned as we are and actually being willing to put their money on the table or their commitments on the table to actually do something about the problem.
So how do we get that engagement? Like, what are the steps that we need to take it from conversation to collaboration, to action?
And that's what I was going to ask. What can we do as a committee? What can we take forward and which direction can we go in order to actually do what Janine is suggesting?
First and foremost, it's like the homeless are actually being pushed aside. You don't get no lower than being homeless. I don't know what's lower than homeless. And before the COVID and before the moratorium and everything, they weren't really looked at. They weren't really thought of. They weren't really considered to the point where it is now. So now it's a choice. Who do you help? Who is prioritized? So we have all these groups of individuals now coming together that's under the same need, the need that's always been there. So now we're like, okay, who gets the first choice? Who gets this choice? Who helps who helps not, you know? And it really saddens me, you know, to see it have to come to choices, but everyone really is ending up gonna need help because it looks like it's gonna, Durham cannot have any more homeless people on the street. It's nowhere, no facility for the ones that were already here to go. And Janine, I get what you're saying, you know, and it just takes more than us. It takes the money. Money rules everything. Let's just put it out there. Money. It's all about money, how the money is going to distribute it. Who can we go to get this money? We need to invite all of those into this group. Then we need to invite the people that are going through lived experience. Bring people in to speak about what they're, what they're going through. Bring in the homeless people, let them speak. Like, everybody get at the table so we can agree to disagree and get people straight. If we have another winter like we just had, and none of this is resolved, heaven forbid, it's hard. It's hard and it's rough. I mean, you got to really be out there. And I was out there and I've seen it firsthand with that. And now people that, have fallen underneath of this thing with no structural place permanent with this COVID thing and this moratorium, and it's crazy. We're pulling our hair out. They're pulling their hair out. Everybody, but people have to really take this seriousness. I see so many buildings going up out here,
Right.
but it's only one or two places. Even over there at Urban Ministry, they got a building going up. I don't know what it is. They don't even have nowhere to sit. It's hard for me to even go out here and find homeless individuals. I can see them all up Guest Road. On Guest Road at CDI. It's helping up there, but what about everybody? Where are they going? You're already homeless. Now the homeless are saying, damn, we can't even be homeless because we got other people coming in who's going to be homeless now, and they're going to get the top choices because they come in with more leverage than what they have. You know what I'm saying? So it's crazy, man, y'all. We just, this is.
So
Right.
Angel, the property that's the when they're doing the construction by Urban Ministries, that's that 300 or 500?
300.
That's the 300 block right there that we're talking about, that this conversation spun from. That's the 300 block with some of the affordable housing units that's going to be there.
Was there any is that in there? In that one at 300? Affordable housing?
That 59. I think that's the 59.
There's 300 total affordable units between 300 and 500.
The 110 and 300 block.
They're all affordable at 300. They're not
right,
all
but
30% AMI, but they're all affordable.
But I think from our last conversation that we had, it's not just going to be, it's more units, but there are also some people that have already been promised spaces in those units. So you can't count the entire stock as new housing, right?
Well, the information we received that I sent out indicated otherwise. I mean, Drew Cummings and Honolulu did some additional research into this and came back and said that over the next 10 years, there should be 1,700 new, stock units for affordable, to be included in the housing stock.
So
that's not just on these two sites, of course,
Right. I go to the implementation committee meetings. And so in one of those meetings that I was in, there was some mention that some of those units are promised to people who are going to be displaced from other places.
Yep. True.
So all those units are not necessarily going to be new stock because so many of those units have already been promised to other people as where they're going to stay when these other places are torn down or whatever. They're going to be their new dwellings.
That is what I had always heard too. But when I looked into this more deeply, the email that I sent out and that information I sent out and that Honolulu sent out, that's what we heard. It's not, I don't totally understand it. The one thing I did understand was over 10 years, 1,700 new units, 300 new units at 300 and 500 Main Street, helping people who need housing. Is it going to be enough? Of course not.
But I think that one of our issues is we want to know what the real numbers are. What's going to be left? What's truly going to be new?
1,700.
The promises.
Those are the numbers we got. 1,700 units are the numbers that we got when we looked into it.
But is the 1,700 numbers the numbers from the bond overall promise?
It's everything. Yeah.
But so I think some of those units are going to be earmarked from other people. So they're really not, yes, they're fully new units, but when you look at who's been promised or guaranteed spaces in those new places, it's really not new units. So we need to know what what the real number of units is.
Sharita, that is the net increase after all of the bond projects are done should be 1,700 units as a net increase. However, that's not going to be day one because the DHA RAD conversions will go in and redevelop the older public housing complexes. And when they go in and tear those down, they have to so it's like, we'll build one, shift everybody from public housing place A to here,
Right.
or here, or here, here. And then at the end of the cycle, there should be a net increase. But
that's
that net
10
increase, it'll be some time.
So yeah, so that's 10 years
In
from
the
today. That's
meantime.
what we have in the making. That's
Let
what
Let
we
me
have.
read this. Let me read this from Drew and from Honolulu, the research that I did. This is what Drew says. Drew thinks that because the county construction will not displace anyone, in principle, all of our affordable units will be new affordable units. Drew believes that Durham Housing Authority plans to and has to accommodate any displaced Durham Housing Authority resident with other DHA structures, which will be possible because they are starting with new construction at J.J. Henderson. If DHA's multi-phase construction plan goes according to plan, they should be creating about 1,400 net new affordable units, net as in after they have rehoused everyone who lived on those sites previously. So I don't know how to, reconcile these two different sort of points of view that we've heard, but that is the latest that we've gotten from people who are in the know. So one other question that I have, and maybe Janine can help with this, is I guess I've been reading in the newspaper, and then I was contacted this weekend by advocates who are phone banking across the state about how the federal funding to help people stay in their homes, prevent eviction, et cetera, that a very small percentage of it is actually getting out the door to the people that need it. And she wanted to know what's happening here in Durham, and I haven't had a chance to connect her with people like Janine who can answer that. But I mean, that seems really relevant to this conversation, is being sure we're using all the resources that are coming to us from the federal government.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, at this point, we've used about 40% of the first tranche of money that we've received. And we're, spending more and more each week. I hate to use the word spending, assisting with more and more each week. The other thing I want to make clear is that I don't want to see us as two groups, because ERAP can help those who are at 30% of AMI who are housed, and those who are at 30% of AMI that are not housed. There are ways that we can assist you to get a lease agreement in place, and then ERAP funds can step in. So I don't want anybody to think you can either get ERAP funds or you can get housing funds, because that they're supposed to be working together. And that's what we county city have been trying to do, is to work together to make sure that if there are funds in this lane, that we're using them, and if there are funds in this lane, we are using them, so that there are funds available to whichever side of this that you sit on, whether you're housed and trying to stay housed but can't afford the housing that you're currently in, or whether you're not. We want to make sure that that's known. Ultimately, the issue is that we kind of have that affordable housing wall that we have to overcome.
So question, is sustainability, is the person's sustainability looked at for ERAP or no?
No.
So if a person has an $800 rent right now and their income is $875 and they can't pay their rent, because this is a real call that I actually got from somebody. The lady's rent is $800 a month. She gets $875 a month. First of all, I'm trying to figure out how she even got in the unit.
Right.
Because she's supposed to make at least 3 times the amount of the rent.
Right.
So that tells me that either somebody did a favor, or this was like a slumlord, and this person is probably living in deplorable conditions.
Yep.
And this landlord was just willing to take the person's money. And they said, well, they need help because the lady need to pay her car insurance and she need to pay her light bill. And I'm like, she only has $75 a month. So I, they said, well, what does she qualify for at DSS? And I said, she can go in and apply for ERAP funds, but I don't know if there's going to be a sustainability plan requirement, because after they pay whatever they pay, she's gonna be right back in that same situation because she doesn't have enough money. So
Right.
yeah.
And there's a limit, right? There's a limit to the money. So if we haven't really got to the root cause of where we're at, then all we're doing is postponing the inevitable.
Band-aids, yeah.
Right, that's it. That's all we're doing. And ultimately what we're trying to do, since these are federal dollars with a purpose, right, is we're trying to stabilize our community, right? Especially those who are most vulnerable to becoming homeless. So ultimately, what we have is a situation where we can continue to pay the money, right? We can continue to pay that rent, but at the end of the period of time that you're eligible for, at the end of that period of time, if you don't have a plan and you haven't engaged us to assist you in that plan, you're going to be right back where you were when you first came in, and now you have no dollars available.
Right.
Yeah. Now there are other things. I'm just going to tell you this, that there are other funding sources here at the county. I'm just going to put that right back out there, that there are other ways to assist people who are in need, especially if they have a light bill or things like that. We've had pretty hot days recently, so you may be eligible for SIP. So just keep in mind that there are other federal dollars also available above and beyond the COVID ones.
But are people when they show the DSS for one pot of funds, are they being evaluated for all potential pots of funds and then kind of directed to the one that's most appropriate to their need? Or
they're evaluated, but not everybody has access to every federal portal. Like, we can't give our temporary staff access to SIP and LEAP. Our full-time staff do, obviously. Those are rules.
So I see some comments in here from Commissioner Carter about ARPA funds and purchasing hotels and things like that to increase stock. I think that's a worthwhile conversation to have. Colin, I don't know how if you have any information on any of that from like your previous communities and if that's been effective or anything like that. But we definitely we have a big problem, and it's coming as soon as this moratorium stuff gets lifted and people start running out of these resources. We're going to be in a really bad space.
So here are a few things that I think we need to keep in mind. And let me back up one moment on the affordable housing piece. Then we can talk about the ARPA funds. So on the affordable housing piece, one of the big things that DHA and other developers are requesting is who's doing the supportive services if we're going to take people exiting the homeless system? Who's providing the supports to people who are coming in who may need those supports? And right now, that's something that we don't have a separate supportive services only, for lack of a better term, project out there that isn't tied to permanent supportive housing.
Let me just insert something in there now. You know that supportive services are optional.
I
but
do
we
know
don't
that.
have to take supportive services. So this is a totally different, like what the housing people are asking us for is something that HUD says you cannot force a person to have.
Correct. But the developers, I think, it's sort of there's the option and people have a place to call if something goes sideways. So the developer can say, hey, Colin, you're the supportive services person for these units. We're having some issues. Can you come over? Or the tenants can call and say, hey, Colin, you're our supportive services worker. We're having issues with the landlord. Can you come help us with these? It's sort of this, I think it's sort of it makes them feel better. It's not necessarily needed or wanted by people coming into the units, but it's one of those things that we're hearing over and over again from landlords is we need a backstop if things go sideways to try and avoid going the eviction route. Is I think that's where it's coming from. They don't want to deal with evictions and they don't want to deal with issues or things that come up. So it's one thing to keep in mind as we look at our system and plan for our system is if we're going to do this and we're going to be requesting private developers to set aside units, we need to think through, okay, do we want to allocate some of our local dollars to set up a services portal? It's kind of like similar to landlord engagement, but I would see it as more of a more on the support side rather than the landlord engagement side, perhaps, if it's needed. But that's something that we need to really do some, as Heidi brought up.
Colin, I understand that because I provide supportive services to all the people that I house for years.
I know you do. I know you do.
I've been here 10 years. I got people that I've been the point of contact that the landlord calls for 10 years. Right. I understand that. And I do that on Lincoln's dime. Not an extra cent from anybody else. On Lincoln's dime. Even right. With DHA and anywhere else, if they have a problem, they call me. Okay.
So we got that. Then the other thing.
Wait a minute, Colin. I've been saying this supportive services thing for a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. I've been saying this for a very long time because it just does not exist. What I will say is that, a lot of people try to say, let's take it out and let's do it like somebody has a request. There's a call-in number. You call this number and somebody responds. That's really not a good supportive services model. You really need to know these clients because there are some clients that they're just at the end of their buck. That's just what it is. You learn their baseline, you know how they operate, and this is just not the setting that's the most beneficial to them. Let's stop that game, and this person needs to go somewhere else. It requires you to really know the client. So we can't have this hands-off approach, call in, somebody responds to a random person kind of thing. There has to be a relationship. Mm-hmm. It can't just be a Band-Aid solution. So if we do that, I'm saying that because it has to be built a certain way to be able to do that and do it well.
You are absolutely correct, Sharina. And that's what we need to take the time as perhaps that's something this committee can look at and make some recommendations as to how would we design a supportive services program that can meet the wide variety of needs of the people who need weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly check-ins, and then be the backstop for those who really are self-sufficient until a crisis happens.
Right.
But we need to, and you're absolutely right, Sharita, is we need to take the time and design what would that look like? What would the costs be so that we could do an RFP to try and find a vendor that would sort of take, essentially be the next step after rapid rehousing or, something along those lines that could do that. The other thing that we were talking about earlier was how do we prioritize these affordable housing units? And if we're making requests for people from the homeless system, we are essentially also saying, sorry, you're about to be evicted and become homeless, so we can't move you into this unit. Perhaps we take a step back and say, rather than prioritizing people exiting homelessness, we prioritize people coming from a coordinated entry system. And that gives you the maximum flexibility of being able to triage and prioritize. Here's somebody who is going to be literally returned to homelessness. If we're not able to move them here, it may mean you have somebody experiencing homelessness a tiny bit longer, but it avoids a recidivism rate, which is one of the things HUD counts against us. So if we look at a good, and as Janine just put in the chat, a really well thought out prevention model, and right now we have a diversion model in our coordinated entry, we do not have a homeless prevention program. And we do have $486,000 of ESG COVID funds that can be used for specifically a homeless prevention program for the next year and a half. And the hope would be that somebody will apply for those funds, which would pay for supportive services. It could partner with ERAP to pay for rents and security deposits to get people into housing and sort of help bridge those gaps. It could also help the people who fall into that homeless about to be evicted because they're over capacity and doubled up. That's another eligible expense for homeless prevention funds under ESG. So we do have an opportunity to pilot if we can find somebody to apply for those funds. I don't know if anybody will apply, how it'll work out. We're trying to solicit folks to apply and hoping that we'll get some takers on the RFP that comes out to step into that role. If nobody applies, then there's not much we can do about it. The next piece, so prevention, ARPA funds. So the ARPA funds, we do have a $4.3 million set aside that's coming out of ARPA, which is in the home category. And home is specifically targeted for the homeless system. And that $4.3 million can be used for acquisition, rehabilitation, and it'll be set with, we're still waiting on final guidelines on what we can do. We don't have an agreement, so we couldn't spend it today if we wanted to. However, we will be putting together and getting input from the community to help us decide what is it that our homeless system really, really needs and prioritizing what those needs are. You know, we've been hearing for years, we need a non-congregate shelter. We need a day shelter. We need a cooling station, a hypo station. We need a medical respite facility. We need more permanent supportive housing. We need more affordable housing. All of these may be eligible activities under home. And what we need to do as a community, and city and county leadership have sort of asked us to come back as a community and ask us and the HSAC to come back by November with kind of a, what is it that we want? What would that project potentially look like? And then that $4.3 million doesn't go very far with an acquisition or a construction project. And that may go back to Heidi's point of asking for additional ARPA funds, that it may be like, hey, you know what? We need 50 units of non-congregate shelter. We need 5 units of medical respite. We need 25 units of permanent supportive housing units. We need a day space. We need this. And then the question is, okay, could this be one project? Does this need to be 4 small projects? But if we're able to put it together, we may be able to put together a rough cost estimate. And it's not just the cost estimate to build the unit or acquire the unit, whatever that may look like, whether it's a hotel, a new construction project, whatever it may look like. It's also, once you build it with home funds, you have to sustain it for that purpose for I want to say it's at least 20 years. So you're making a pretty substantial commitment to making sure that that place does not
Right.
fall into disrepair
Right,
for the next 15 to 20 years.
right.
And you've got staff and all these other commitments. So that's going to be, you know, the next conversation will be, once you build it, you got to keep it running. And sort of what are county and city leadership willing to kind of commit to doing that? And what I've kind of been hearing is, let's look at this and see if we can come up with a transformative project for the homeless community that will actually impact our system in a really positive way. And if we can come up with something that's well thought out, well designed, with the community input, then we can take that and let city and county leadership, you know, wrestle with the, okay, how much money can we realistically put in? Let's say it's I'm just throwing out a random number, so don't quote me. Let's say it's a $40 million project to build, brand new. Okay, that means we need $36 million to add to the 4 million that HUD's giving us. Okay, now we got the 36 million. Now what's going to cost to operate this for the next 15 to 20 years? And where is that funding going to come from? Because the HUD Continuum of Care grant is not going to go up substantially. There's no guarantee of it. We can always apply for bonus money, but it's a hit or miss if you get it. The state ESG money increases a small percentage each year, but it's not enough to fully fund an entire position with the increase. And the city entitlement funds that come with ESG aren't enough to do it. So federal money may not be our answer for long-term support of these programs. It may come down to local county dollars to say, okay, this is what it's going to cost, and here's how we need to merge these together. So I think there is a lot of discussion that will be coming. And this week, Ruby and I are getting together to start setting up some meetings to hear input and to prioritize the needs and try and land on some numbers of these units. And we're going to be holding in-person meetings, try and send out some surveys that can be filled out. And we really want to hear as best we can. That's something that we're going to need help on, is hearing from people experiencing homelessness, because all of us here may be seeing things one way, but it's the people who are living and experiencing homelessness that really know what do they need right here and now. And we need to really listen to those voices and get those voices heard. So anybody who can help us get those voices to the table would be greatly appreciated. Even if they can't attend a virtual meeting, if we can get the feedback in some survey form that we can categorize that data, will help us to design what the ultimate should look like. Once we hear that information, we'll bring it back to policy and plan to this committee. Obviously, all of you on this call will be invited to these meetings to attend as much as you can. To synthesize it, policy and planning will then make a recommendation to the HSAC. The HSAC will then sort of recommend to city and county leadership, on behalf of the homeless system, this is what we think is most needed in our continuum. If we can work with the multifamily development team at community development to try and land on an approximate cost, that'll be, bonus. But if we can at least get a concept together, then we can go to the next steps to figure out the costs. Anyway, that's all. Go ahead, Heidi. Oh.
I think that was clapping, not raising hands. I think that sounds great. Really, I like a plan like that and a timeline. When did you say you hoped that the process, you would have gone through the process and will come forward with a HSAC recommendation to city and county leadership?
County manager and city manager asked for something by November. So it'll be a pretty quick, and I think we're not going to be starting from scratch, which is the good news, because we've had for years lists of things that are sort of in the pipeline and dreams. It's really sort of taking all those dreams, putting them on one sheet of paper, and then trying to say, how many of each of these do we need? And then once we do that, sort of saying, okay, what is number 1 through 10, and ranking them so that if we come back and it's like, okay, to do all of this, it's 50 million. And if county and city leadership say, okay, 50 million, that's way out of the ballpark, and $2 million a year to operate, we got to scale it back. Then we can either start playing with, okay, we'll do items 1 through 3, that gets us in the parameter. Or instead of doing 10, 5, 10, 10, we cut all those in half and scale the project down, but still be able to check off some level of them. We could do that. That's my hope.
Great. That sounds great.
So.
I have a question. Where do public-private partnerships come into play? If everybody's talking about the Googles and the Apples and all of these corporate folk who are coming into the area, I know that other communities have been able to get support from these large corporate entities in order to be able to make an impact that the communities feel is appropriate, whether it's infrastructure or whatever. So where could that fit in this model that we're talking about?
It's a great point, Colleen. And I believe, I don't know for sure, Heidi, there's probably a city and or a county group that works on public-private partnerships and looks for those types of things.
Commerce. Yeah. We have a contact there that we work with, particularly when it comes to funding like this. We were working on that prior to COVID with our eviction dollars. Because obviously $180,000, which is what we had in that pot, goes fast. We were spending double that. So we were doing a public-private partnership to raise those funds, and we were able to do that through the Department of Commerce. So yeah, that would be one way. I'm not sure about, bringing in Amazon, but if we could, let's do it.
I say, let's ask.
It is a really great question. And it makes me think about how the only sort of point of leverage I feel like I really have as an elected official is when our economic development staff brings forward a proposal for an incentive to, help recruit the business to come here, right? Like the state has these grants, these job development grants, and they often require a local match. And then we have a policy that says we can give up to half of what the new tax money will be that having the new company come here will generate. We can give them up to half that amount. And so, we do that a lot, and it's great in that it does help us bring jobs to the area, and we've really been successful with that over the years. Two things: we're not sure it's mostly county residents that are getting the jobs, so we're really working on trying to make sure our residents and our workforce is really ready for those jobs. But secondly, we are asking more of these corporations that are coming. How will you be a good civic partner? And this is something we have not really added to our list, and I think it's just making
we should be.
We should include.
We
Right.
should be. We should be adding some array of different options and opportunities to foster that, to say that we are a community that values, every resident, and we see you coming in as an asset, and we want you to join in the same spirit of taking care of our community as you come in, come into our area. I think we maybe we should have an array of different things we can suggest.
We do
Right.
have that array, and we need.
Right.
I think it's a great suggestion to add this to it. But the other thing is, it really makes sense to add it to it because they are going to make the market tighter, so that the house, more people coming is going to make the market tighter, and house costs are going to go up. So it's kind of it's directly related, I guess, is what I'm thinking. Anyway, thank you for putting that on my radar.
I just keep thinking it's not just the tech jobs and all of that. A lot of people that we're talking about will be those support services positions and be able to do all of that lower level kind of support for the people coming to the community. And so you do, not that that's the only place, but then,
Right.
That is something that's considered as well. I saw a young man in a BMW delivering pizza yesterday in Durham. So I said, we've come to a different space. Just, what are we doing, and where are we in this community?
I think when we say supportive services, I think we should also have a conversation about what supportive services, the spectrum of supportive services, because we have people who don't know how to clean. We have people who don't know how to cook. We have people, and we don't find out until we get them in housing. And ultimately, some of their failure in housing comes from these things. They don't know how to keep an apartment clean. They just can't even begin to imagine it. I got a person that I'm working with we didn't know this person's baseline, but this person goes in and drills holes in bathtubs, and it leaks to multiple apartments and causes catastrophe. And we've moved them around, and it always still ends up being the same thing. So, but there's no resource there to show them how to walk them through the process. If it's a slow drain, you don't drill a hole in your bathtub. There are certain things you need to activate. I don't even know why that was the thought, but that is the thought, and it's happened more than once.
Yeah.
But they don't have that person that they can just go to just for those simple day-to-day things. We're dealing with people. Some of these people have never been in housing as adults, period. So they've been in housing with their parents, but they didn't do any of the day-to-day stuff that it took to maintain the house, or they may not even seen it, or the parents might not have been well versed in it either. They have to learn all of those things. It's so much more than just giving them a roof over their head.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? We don't want them to have other people in their units. Even though people are homeless, it's the most socially interactive homeless experience ever, because they have all these people that are homeless just like them, and they're together. So we put them in this house and we say, oh, nobody can come here and stay with you. That's not their reality. They are sad. They're depressed. I worry about more of my clients when they get housed than I ever did with them being on the street, because that's when it gets real. When I'm looking at these four walls and I don't know what to do with this. This is not my reality. And my friends can't come stay and and hang out with me, and we can't do what we did in the encampment inside the apartment.
And that's so true, Sharita, because I see that all the time down at CDI when you give them a room, and we thinking what's good for them, but we're not asking them what's good for them. So in putting homeless people in a home, which we want to keep them in a home, but it's more than just putting them in a home. They got to get prepared mentally, because they're used to being in the street, used to being with other people's like them. But then when you put them in a room, say, oh, you can't have no company. Nah, you're going to see them outside all the time. And, it's like they have a bond. They're together. They might not have anything, but not have anything together, they bond better together because they understand one another. You don't understand it until you have actually spent time with them, not a day or two. I'm talking about years, and understand where they're coming from. Like I seen a gentleman when they put him up at CDI, and like I always say, homelessness comes in all different kind of categories. It's not just homelessness. And this individual, he had a mental problem, and they gave him somewhere to stay, but he didn't want to be in there. He was in there for when it was cold, but when it's out, he wants to be out. He wants to go back to where he's familiar with, where he's loved at, where he's cared for in his mind. But in our mind, we're loving and caring for them, that putting them in somewhere. But they need to have training. It needs to have some kind of step one before you put them into housing, because it's hard to explain. You just gotta really know and be to understand. It's hard to explain to you all, but I get what you're saying, Sharita, because I've seen it. I've been there. I see it all the time. I see it all the time. And what we think is good for people, we're not asking them. Don't they get a say so of their life? Let them be included in it instead of just here, take room. They're probably just staying it, and then just they feel better out there on the street. You'll see them doing things that they're used to, and they don't have to. Like, why are you sitting out here like you're homeless? You got a room. Learn behavior. It's hard. And where they feel comfortable at. You got to feel comfortable within where you're going to be in your surroundings. It's just hard.
Well, I thought it was going to be a short meeting, you guys, and it's turning out not to be a short meeting. And we have about 29 minutes, and it's one more item, just a gaps analysis update on the agenda. And I don't want to take from this conversation, because these are the conversations we need to make space for and make room for, so we can try to figure out where we want to go, you know, as a community, how we want to impact the community as policy and planning as a part of the HSAC, you know, how we want to push this thing forward. Because we got goals and the goals haven't changed. The goals been the same goals for the last 10 plus years. They're the same goal. And I'm ready to push the envelope to the next level. I don't know if you guys are ready for that, but it just, it's just hard. It's just hard. We're dealing with people who are frequently ignored, and you know, even the best intentioned people are not prepared for the level of things that our folks need. I mean, which we've seen in the midst of a pandemic when we had to like tell people what we actually needed. They hadn't even thought about it. It was like the furthest thing away from their mind. So, Ms. Colleen, I want to make space to give you time to give a update on the gaps analysis. But I just want to thank you guys all for your compassion and your heart for people who don't have homes, and for this work that we need to continue to do around housing affordability and helping folks live better, safer. All right, Ms. Colleen.
And I just had two questions, and I'm thinking I might have missed it. Quite a bit of conversation when Commissioner Carter put out there about expanding housing stock by purchasing hotels in the way that Durham Rescue Mission has done. Did we talk to that or speak to that? I just don't remember hearing what the statement was, because we talked about build, and build is one thing, but if you're purchasing a hotel, you're talking about maintenance. So I'm just asking before I give my report.
Some of this goes back to, unless Commissioner Carter, do you want to answer that or do you want me to?
I'm happy for you to answer it, Colin. All I know about it is what I read about it in, you know, governing news magazines, and what I talk about with my colleagues when we're dreaming about possible ways to address our community's challenges. So I'd love to hear your answer, Colin.
Sure. So the purchasing a hotel sort of goes back to the beginning of the pandemic when we started renting hotel rooms and the cost for that. At this point, we could have bought a hotel.
Right.
Exactly.
Not quite bought a hotel, but pretty close.
Yeah.
And Reinvestment Partners has said, hey, you know, if we bought a hotel, we could use it for medical respite. We could use it as non-congregate shelter. There's a bunch of different things we could do with it. And that was something that has, I think, sort of been percolating and circulating here. There are jurisdictions in Washington State who went out and bought a hotel with money that came in. Some of it was they were already planning to do that, which made it a whole lot easier and faster for them to do it when the money came. It made their financing a whole lot easier. The question is purchasing a hotel the right answer for our community? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And talking with Reinvestment Partners, some of the challenges with purchasing a hotel is, depending on the type of hotel you buy, you may have massive renovation costs in order to add kitchenettes and upgrade plumbing to handle you know, that type of kitchenette. So if you're looking at purchasing a hotel, you would need to purchase something that's kind of like an extended stay hotel that already has a kitchenette in it and is built according to kind of a multifamily code versus a run-of-the-mill Red Roof Inn, Marriott, whatever, that are just basic rooms with toilet, sink, shower, because there isn't a place to cook, there isn't garbage disposal, there isn't plumbing set up for that type of space. So that's kind of where the hotel concept came from, was this could meet some immediate needs in an affordable way and still have an asset at the end of it that could be converted to something else. And it goes back to, what would you use the space for afterwards? And that could be anywhere from non-congregate shelter, some affordable single room occupancy type units. It could be used, some rooms could be set aside for medical respite. But then the next question is, okay, how many hotels are out there that are up for sale? 2, what are the price to buy them? And 3, are the hotels that are available coded and designed already for what we need them to, or is it going to require a substantial facelift, uplift, and retrofit to get it in compliance with zoning and coding rules? And then the next piece is, what's the location? As we know, if this is a hotel that's going to be used for people experiencing homelessness, we need to make sure that the unit is accessible, and not just accessible for ADA, but also accessible transportation wise.
Yeah. And Colin, in purchasing these hotels, it does need to have things in there that tenants will be able, because a lot of them don't have the refrigerators or microwaves. So they still have, you can't cook, and I wouldn't recommend anybody giving them a hot plate or anything in there to cook, because that's not really safe. But a microwave and a refrigerator and air, and a TV, that's some of the standards that, can help to really accommodate in those facilities and upgrading them. And as far as them getting fed, I often drop off packages there, but it's nothing that you can cook. It's things you can put in your microwave and stuff like that. So it's always a lot of accommodations that go along with, what Reinvestment Partners have done down at CDI, which is a really good thing, because they have come in here and on the B side have really remodeled those places, and they look beautiful. But that other side is, I guess that's not their side. That's the hotel side. It's terrible. It's deplorable. But I commend Peter what he's came in and he's doing over there, and with Urban Ministry and anybody else is helping over there. It works. It's some tenants that are there now. A lady that used to live behind Food Line in her tent for a minute, and she's still getting used to having her room. And they give her food and everything, and you can see her food lined up in her room. She survived on her foreign beer and her cigarettes. And as much as often as I would take her food behind Food Line, or she'd be right there in front of Food Line, once she's just set in stuff that she likes. Does she always eat that food? Nope. But she just sits there. Before you would see her smile once in a while, even as bad as she was doing up at Food Line. Every time I go see her, she's really just super depressed. That's why I said we try to do with good intentions of helping these individuals that are out living it, and a lot of them will tell you, no, I'd rather stay out here. I don't want these restrictions on me. I have to do this. I got to abide by this. And they be like, I ain't had these restrictions out in the street, living on my own for 10 plus years. So it's a lot to take into consideration, accommodating individuals that are homeless. And like I said, throughout every different kind of category, especially our mental ill.
And some of the hotel discussion is kind of what prompted sort of this community listening session that is trying to figure out, is a hotel the right answer for our community? Will it check our check boxes? And if it is, great. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's something we haven't even thought of yet. So that's kind of what it is if we're going to invest a substantial amount of money, let's make sure we invest it in something that is really going to help us and help us long-term, and check as many of the check boxes as we can.
I think
before we just sort of make an assumption and throw all the money
it
into one
help,
thing.
but you can't just throw something on somebody that been living some certain way. It's you have to help them to want to be able to help themselves, for us to be able to help them. It's like it's like raising a child. You gotta go all the way back, take us out of it and put them in it. And, you know, we never know what or how a person life is been living out in the streets 10, 30 years or whatever. But I think it's a good thing of helping. It's just that we have to get to help them mentally, you know, to get them to understand this is really good for them to, you know, but like Sharita was saying, like we can't separate. You don't give people stuff, then separate them from something that brought them through life. And that's, you know, a lot of them see having housing or having this as separating, you know, then they sneaking their friends in. You know, that's who they've been used to being with. That's like if you was with your parents and they just separate you from your parents. It's hard.
Thank you. Ms. Colleen, did that answer your question?
Yes, and I guess it segues into the work that we're doing as the gaps analysis subcommittee. We were originally slated to finalize and present our findings by September when we were looking at the transition, but the committee doesn't really want to rush to completion. So in an effort to really ensure the efficacy of the work, that we've determined that we can't meet that deadline, and we're recommending that we report to you at the end of the calendar year instead of in September. This is still an ambitious timeline, but we're working diligently toward that date. So as a reminder, and Angel is part of our subcommittee, we're performing a gaps analysis of 2 subpopulations, and this is for persons who are new to the group as well. We're looking at youth experiencing homelessness, as well as homeless persons experiencing mental health concerns. And we're doing this while applying an equity lens to the work that we're doing. So I wanted to give you some updates and observations. So during the spring, we were very, very fortunate to work with an unpaid intern from UNC Chapel Hill. And Nikki has a passion for this work and the population that we're analyzing. She even continued to volunteer with us during the summer in spite of her obligations with a full-time paid internship. So as a group, we have worked through the learning curve to be with the support and guidance of staff, that's with Hanalea and with Colin at times as well, to get to this point where we've now prepared surveys that we're currently administering to staff members of various agencies who support this population. We're expecting to complete those by August 16th, which I believe is this Friday. Next Monday. It's not Friday, it's next Monday. So this will be followed by our need to do the thematic analysis and data coding. We're going to need some additional support in completing this task. So if interviews were not your shtick, this might be an area where you could support, or if you personally can't support and you have staff or someone else within your organization who could, we do need to be able to do the looking at the themes within the interview results, as well as coding that data. So the step that's immediately following that is to create interview guides for our 2 populations, the youth and persons experiencing mental health concerns. And we're going to use these interview guides to be able to talk to the persons who are directly affected. So we're going to need your support as well for this section, because we need to identify persons that we can interview. So with the COVID concerns, and I know you're probably thinking how you're going to do that, with those having changed over the past few weeks, the logistics for how we'll conduct the interviews has not been finalized. So if you have suggestions or ideas, we'd appreciate those as well if you wanted to share those. And lastly, if we're looking at this work, we were able to acquire an unpaid internship, and we may be able to get another unpaid student intern. But this work requires a level of financial commitment, whether it's from COC or HSAC, county or city, but we need that kind of support in order to be effective. We can't really do this work in the best way relying on us to volunteer as well as acquiring unpaid interns. If we're reminded that we're actually looking at this with an equity lens as part of this work. And so it really does require an appropriate level of support, which means dollars in our minds. That's my report, and I'm open for questions.
I want to thank you, Ms. Colleen, for taking the helm of this committee and leading the group in the efforts. I'm excited to see the outcomes. I am as well the member on the committee. Although in recent, times of becoming a new mom, that's been a challenge sometimes, but I am, I'm excited to see the outcome of how things are going to go. And, I believe that, equity means you got to have the same kind of support, if not more. Sometimes it's got to be really, truly intentional. And so we just need to be mindful of that as, members of the community, and understanding that the folks that we serve are minorities, or people who are not in the majority, and that oftentimes they get fewer resources, and we need to try to make sure that we're not perpetuating what we already see in the world. Any questions for Ms. Colleen? I mean, you're not. Go ahead.
It's not a, it's a comment, it's just the group was okay with us extending the date to the calendar year end.
So I think that we've had this conversation before, if I'm not mistaken. I just don't know if we came to a resolution on it. I want to say that I think I was the one that suggested maybe December as a target time, but I don't know if we ever set that in stone. I don't think we have a quorum to vote on it to make that official. So we would probably have to bring that up for a vote in a follow-up meeting. In our next month meeting, I think we talked about it, but I don't know if we ever made a commitment. I can go back and check the minutes. Ebony, we had you on the agenda, but I don't know if you're prepared today, so we will table that. Are there any announcements or anything at this time?
I spoke with Collins this
Oh, Ebony, something's happening.
I texted you, Sharita. She, Ebony said that she wasn't prepared for today, just due to
Gotcha.
some conflicts.
All right. Well, I will, but we can't. Well, so it sounds like we want to end our meeting if nobody has any additional information or comments or questions for Ms. Colleen.
Contact with you to let you know why I wasn't able to present this morning.
I'm sorry, I missed that, Ebony, because you have a delay or a distortion on your side. Okay, Ebony, I don't know if you can hear me. We will bring up, we will revisit updates from the CE subcommittee in our next meeting. At this time, it is 11:50, and you guys get 10 minutes to add it back to your day.
Thank you, Rita. Great meeting, great advocacy conversations. I love it. Thank you.
No problem. Really all right, so I will talk to you guys again. The second week of September this year is going really fast.
It is. It really. It's almost scary that we're already almost in 2022. I don't know how that happened. It was just 19, but we're still here and we're rocking and rolling.
It amazes my brain. My baby is almost 1 year old.
Oh my gosh!
Amazes my brain.
Wow. Wow. Oh. All right. Take care, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Well.
Thank you.
Colin, you know, I always do this thing at the end of the meeting. Is that Lavette? Oh, I thought she was talking. If we want to help or participate or be part of this work that you and Ruby are doing, what do we need to do? And I always keep thinking, it's like, there are people at my institution who could help. And then every time I reach out and approach them, it just does not fit, because things work around an academic cycle and an academic schedule. And so something like this would have to be talked about and planned months in advance, and that's not how this work happens. So what can I do?
So are you talking about the planning of what to do with these?
Yeah, the
home
money
funds?
and what I'm thinking of, and this is just one aspect of it, which was the supportive services. And I'm just thinking School of Social Work, and I've been in conversations with 3 different instructors or professors as it relates to social work and the kinds of things that they do and what they think about. And we're graduating all of these master's level students in social work. So somebody helping to develop and design how something like that can work or have interest in that. That's all I was thinking of, is just one piece of the developing of the budget. And it wasn't, you know, all of this, you know, how the housing is structured and all of that, but just that one aspect.
I think you'll be included on the invite.
Okay.
So I think if you have folks who you think would be interested in coming, you can forward it to them.
Okay.
And see if they want to be part of the discussion.
Okay.
Like home funds are not, they don't pay for the supportive services. They're like construction, you know, bricks and mortar type stuff.
Yeah, I understand that. But we
yeah,
keep saying in order for this to be successful, you have to have that piece of it. So going and finding the funding or whatever, but saying we've thought of this holistically says to me, that's a better plan.
Well, I think you're right on that, Colleen. I think it's sort of taking that step back and saying, okay, what is it that we want to use our, you know, are there things that policy and planning feel like we should be spending our dedicated housing funds on? Because right now we've got dedicated housing funds that are going for coordinated entry with diversion, landlord engagement. The landlord engagement contract ended. So it's kind of like, if money's available, what are things that the policy and planning committee feel would be a good use of those funds? And is it going out and recruiting landlords? Is it establishing a supportive services program and recruiting landlords? What would this look like, so that we can sort of come up with okay, here's how much money we have and here's what this might look like.
This is not inclusive of the 62 million that they have with the ARPA funds.
No, those ARPA funds are like one-time shot in the arm.
Right.
So we're looking at sort of what's our long-term sustainability plan. Those shot in the arm dollars would get us, you know, construction done.
Construction or building purchase or
construction or
like
acquisition.
So, okay, because when Commissioner Carter mentioned something about we could submit recommendations for that as well. Is that's not what you all are working on right now. That's a whole different conversation.
I think the two are connected from what I'm hearing. Is sort of like the home funds are are not included in that 62 million and 40 million.
Right.
It's 4.2 million here.
Right.
But if we have a request of 40 million, then it would pull from those two ARPA fund sources.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So I think that's how, in my mind, that's how I would tie them together.
All right.
Because we'll come back with a sort of, here's what we need as a shot in the arm to make things really cool.
I'm really interested in what is the plan, the advocacy that we can do to actually move the needle. You know, the passionate conversation I'm really good with, but I need us to move, get out of my head. I want to be, we know that there are tons of different issues, but how do we actually do something? I need to see some folk get house, stay house, families, folk, and I'm just seeing people being squeezed to the edges. So I'm just concerned, and I want to know how to effectively advocate if this planning process is that. That's what I want to be a part of.
That's what I'm sort of hearing, and I'm getting feedback from others that they really would like to see the HSAC as a governing body really kind of make policy recommendations
Yeah,
and
yeah.
funding recommendations,
Yeah,
and just sort of maybe it's an annual, hey, if money is available, here's what we would do with it. Boom, 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 boom.
okay,
And, sort of how do we do this and take it to county and city leadership so it's on the forefront?
okay.
And,
And-
other homeless boards that I've worked with in my career, a lot of that work is not just the homeless board bringing things to elected officials. It's the homeless board doing the grassroots mobilizing of
Right,
friends, family, and
right.
neighbors.
Right,
So it's not just this, hey, we have
My
a vested
voice.
interest in pestering you, but we got
Yeah.
our friends pestering you too.
yeah, yeah, and that's what I'm thinking. I had appreciation for what folk were saying, but there's some voices that are still not present that could
Mhm.
have some real value in this
Yep.
discussion. So
Oh,
okay,
absolutely.
just let me know. I'm just kind of like, whew, it was so weighty, but it's still. And Ruby, I see you still on mute, but we're gonna be gone by the regular meeting end time. I don't keep him longer than the meeting, but okay. I just wanted to know what the next step that we need.
Yep, you'll be on the invite. And then one of the things we'll do is we'll post the, sort of summary of the meetings on the Continuum of Care website,
Okay,
and sort of allow people to, who can't make the meetings to be able to look at those, send feedback back to us so we can incorporate as much as we can.
okay.
And try and make this as transparent and get as many voices heard as we can. But then we have to sift through where you've got the conflicts of interest where, well,
Right.
I really need housing for mental health. Well, you're a mental health provider. So of course you're only looking at it with that lens. I need housing for people who are sick. Well, of course you do, because you're a hospital.
Yeah,
It's sort of how do we sift through and find the need, and then once we figure out the needs, prioritizing, and there are needs for all of them.
because I don't
and
want
there's
to see any
different-
more bicycle lanes. I'm just kidding.
Having taken up bicycling after having to end my running career, I will say is bicycling lanes are pretty nice because sidewalks end just and
Everywhere.
biking on a sidewalk is really difficult, but
The lanes aren't where you would. Yeah, because where we have some lanes, there are sidewalks as well. So,
but you really don't want a bicyclist flying down a sidewalk with people
No.
walking.
no, but I just don't want, I'm wondering if that's truly the priority of the people. It was
Yeah.
who could have voice at that time. So that's why I'm saying, how do we help? How do we help? It's a joke when I say that, but it's like, was that really the priority? And I'm like, I don't know.
And that's
I cycle too, and I used to cycle on the streets in New York.
There you go.
There were no bike lanes.
No, not New York.
We did it. So
Absolutely. And then, but that's our goal here, is really to take a step back and not rush into buying a hotel with these
Okay.
funds, because buying a hotel may be what we ultimately need.
right.
But just because that's been the first idea and one of the more vocal ideas that's been out there for a while,
Mhm.
doesn't mean it's the right idea or the right project for what we need. And before we get county and city leadership to get married to a project, we really need to get married to what our need is,
Right.
and then
And so-
develop what
yeah.
that might look like. So then we end up with the right product at the end of the day.
Okay. I'm feeling it. I said I was gonna honor the time of the meeting,
good.
so I'm gonna hang up, and thank you so much for taking.
You got it, Colleen. Give me
Okay.
a call anytime.
All right, thanks.
Talk to you soon. All right.
Mhm.